It's Leslie here. Leslie Plazz. Sunday. Zazoo Plazz report. Sunday, April 19th. Is it Sunday? It's about 11 in the morning. It's kind of cloudy outside, so it's good. We won't get too much glare. I got my little owl over here. If you were here last week, I talked about it. My friend over there, the little gnome. My Saturn. Oh man. Oh, how's everybody doing? So I went out and I did laundry the night before. I've been busy this weekend. I got my laundry done. I like doing stuff at night. Night is when I get all my good work done at night. I saw a big frog in the road the other day. The other night I was out. It was like midnight. There's this big frog. They're all, it's the time when they all go and it's mating season. So you hear them. They're all over the place. You know, making their frog sounds at night. And oh my God. Underestimate me, that'll be fun. It's a little chilly, so I threw on a shirt. April's crazy here in New England, here in Connecticut. Because one day it's like 80 degrees, and you're like, you got the air conditioning on. And then the next day you wake up and it's like 49 degrees. I'm freezing myself. Oh my God. I got the spring socks out. The spring sockies. Put all my winter stuff away. Yeah, getting ready for spring, summer. But it takes until June for it to be consistently warm here. So, they got the pool. I don't want to go in the pool. It's going to take me till July to go in that thing. It's going to be freezing. Okay. All right, Zazoo. So, yeah. So let's see what we got going on this week. I'll do a little astrological update to start off. We have everything. So think fire. It's a big. We got six planets in Aries. Including Chiron. Sun is getting ready to go into Taurus, almost early next week. The moon's in Taurus conjunct, let's see, Uranus in Taurus. The moon and Uranus are conjunct, and Venus is in Taurus. So we got that going on. Then we've got Mercury, Mars, Neptune, and Saturn conjunct in Aries. It's crazy, all this fire energy, just like my kid. He's up at UConn. He's doing controlled burns. He's in Aries. He just had his birthday. He's burning sections of land up in the Yukon forest. At not the Yukon, the University of Connecticut. He's working with the state fire officials in the college to see what happens with the land, with the soil, when they they did an article on him. I posted it on my Facebook page if you're interested. There's a video, it shows him in his fire gear. He's out there scorching the earth. So something to do with fungi, mushrooms growing, and reintroducing old chestnut trees that had long died out, but they were a hardy species. So they're going to see, what fire doing controlled burns does to the soil, and as far as regenerating, plants, and getting rid of invasive species. It's a good way to get rid of, some of these insects that are invasive to the state. In other words, they come in, they do a lot of damage. They don't belong here. So my cat, I'm so proud of him. And then the other one just finished, he just ran his first half marathon with his girlfriend. They went up to down to Newport, Rhode Island. They had a race there. And they were training throughout. When they were even in Vietnam, they were training for this race. You got to give these Gen Zs credit. I mean, they're amazing. They're just starting to hit their stride, That's why I get very frustrated with some of these creators who put down Gen Z, because and this comes into play with the song today. I really enjoy listening to some Gen Z creators, and I'm proud of my kids, not in a boastful way, but when they work hard and they come up, they make their own path. I'm really proud of them. I think, gee, we did something right. Got to give the devil his due. Yeah, that's in a song today. In other words, you've got to, I think you have to come to terms with, as you move on in life, the things that have challenged you, the things that have pushed you, you can find some good in that situation. Something where, the people you've known, the circumstances you've been in, have taught you valuable things. You've walked the path with people who've, life is lessons, it's about the journey, it's what you learn as you're going along. And, if you just do it to see the fruit of it, to see the end result, you overlook, what you've picked up along the way that have made you the person you are today, the stronger person you are today, as opposed to if you never had any challenges, if you never had anybody pushing your buttons and, making you really look at yourself and look at your beliefs and, all that, you would be unchallenged. You wouldn't grow, right? So it's kind of like the analogy where my kid is, under fire when you're in the heat, right? The heat of the moment, the passion, hot water is when you, what do they say about women, like tea bags? You put them in hot water and I don't know, they make tea. I don't know. There's a saying, something about being in hot water. You don't know what you can do until you're in hot water, like a tea bag or something like that. I don't know. So anyway, I talked about that. Yeah. So I make some beef and broccoli tonight. I made myself a salmon pie last week, and I got to talk about this. I used the natural potato flakes instead of the traditional kind that my mom used in the box, whatever. And I was tired and I was really hungry, so I didn't let the potatoes sit. The other night, they were mushy, kind of. You gotta let them sit and then combine them with the salmon and the onions and stuff. And I just said, whatever. So I mushed them all together, shoved it in the pie shell, and tossed it in the oven. And when I took the pie out, all the potatoes were like, but then, so it tasted good. But then the next day, everything kind of set, and it looked normal, and it tasted, fine. It's just, in the meantime, I was kind of thinking, oh man, this is not good. So that was one of my cooking fails of the week. I've got to go get myself some new spring shoes, some new sneakers, because I've had these a long time, and in the spring weather, your feet kind of expand, and I'm like, you know what? I've been wearing the same pair of shoes for a long time. I don't even know how old these sneakers are. Like, you know what? I'm gonna go, but every time I go to that one, that big shoe store, it's a big shoe warehouse, I always say, oh, I can find something there, and I never do. My ex knows. He knows me in shoes. There used to be this place at the mall, and I think it was like Famous Footwear or something. And I have shoe optimism. I'm a shoe optimist, and I shouldn't be. Because I have a terrible track record with remembering how bad my shoe shopping experiences are everywhere I go. I mean, I can even go to Kohl's and I think, oh, I'm going to find some shoes, and I never do. And I end up getting all hot and bothered and storming out of there, and then I just go randomly. If I'm not in the right mood, see, it's Venus and Taurus. See, maybe that's good for shoe shopping. But then we have, I don't know, we get something in Pisces. Maybe Mars, maybe Neptune and Aries has something to do, because Neptune rules Pisces, which is the feet, and Aries is heat. So, maybe your feet expand during Aries season. I don't know. But I've had terrible experiences at shopping for shoes. I go to these places, and either if I do find something and they have my size, they're usually so expensive that I'm like, I'm not paying that kind of money for them pair of shoes. Or more often they don't. I find a pair that are great, they fit me, they're right price, and they don't have my size. Or something. There's always some damn thing. You go in there and there's a million shoes, and then you spend all this time walking around and trying shoes on, and it's a waste of my time. So enough Zazoo. Okay, enough rant. Oh, my dad's gonna be 89. Okay, there's one more story. I always send him like an e-card. I got a regular paper card. I'm gonna send him in the mail, but I wanted to send him a gift card, and this e-card service I subscribed to. There was no way to select the time, when I wanted to send it. Usually they let you schedule, okay, I want to send it in a week because his birthday's the 25th. But it didn't let me do that. So I sent it, and he's like, oh, thanks for giving me the advance notice. And usually I would send, my dad's used to me being late for everything, late, or just on time, I would send it, right? Or if I sent a card, it might get there a day late, and I would always arrive late. And I still have kind of an issue with that a little bit, with arriving late in person, because I'm in a different timeline. But anyway, so I blew him away because he's like, oh, thanks for reminding me. He says, I'm not reminding me about the upcoming day. He's like, I still haven't gotten used to the thought of the number yet. It takes him a while to get used to his new age number, because he doesn't look 89, and he doesn't feel, his lifestyle, he's in great shape. He's active. He's in 2 bands. He's all over, maintaining his house and doing all these things. We Billwidows, we live a long time. My grandmother was 103 almost, So he's young by comparison, compared to what my grandmother lived to, And so he's, it's just a number. He gets used to the new number in a few months, and then it's like, okay. And I'm kind of the same way. I think of it as a new It's a new year, a new, you know, a new number I haven't been yet, right? And I got that from my dad, you know. He never would harp on that. I've known people in my family, you know, they definitely, in my extended family, you know, they would focus on the number, focus on the, you know, instead of the life in the years, the you know, year, and the focus more on the year than the life. You know what I mean? So we don't subscribe to that. I got that from my dad. That's a good thing I got from my dad. There's some other things I got from my dad that, you know, the eyesight, the skin issues, all these moles, those are from my dad. But, you know, they say give the devil his due. I gotta admit, my dad's got a good attitude about, you know, about birthdays and, you know, enjoying life, you know, all that. So I gotta do that. Okay, so we'll get to the Bible, Zazoo. Come on, we don't have all day. I'm gonna get a new microphone. I'm gonna get my own damn microphone. Stay tuned. Acts of the Apostles. So, you know, Peter standing up, he's talking with the apostles, and they're talking to the Jews after Jesus' resurrection, and they're talking about, they're saying that everything happened to fulfill the, you know, the prediction that David made. You know, how David, that someone from David, the line of David, would, you know, come, and that was Jesus. So they're talking about how, you know, this one Jesus who sent, it was God sent you to, he's telling them God sent Jesus to teach you, to, you know, he's trying to, he's telling them that, you know, Jesus came as, it was part of the plan, the whole thing, you know. David spoke of having his heart feel glad, you know, thinking about how God was not going to abandon him. He had faith that God was going to keep his end of the bargain, right? So everything that David went through, he says, you know, there's someone coming, and this, you know, it's going to happen to fulfill what I'm, you know, all these things that have happened. So, you know, so Peter's talking about all this, how it was part of the plan, you know, for Jesus to do all those signs and wonders, and then to be killed, you know, and then be raised up again. So, and then the Holy Spirit, you know, be poured forth from that. So that, you know, that's interesting. And then the psalmist said, Lord, you will show us the path of life. So the path, walking the path, is very important. It's key for this. There's certain, you know, metaphors that pop up to support that, right? God being at my right hand, and, you know, the idea of the meal, right? That the Catholics celebrate, you know, the Eucharist, the serving of the bread and the, you know, the meal. Lord is my allotted portion and cup, and holds fast our lot. And, you know, another thing about the heart, exhorting the heart, you know, God being our counsel, somebody we can turn to, right? So this is important. In other words, you know, we can rest easy, right? When we do our work, when we do what, you know, my allotted portion. In other words, each one of us has a mission here. We have something our soul wants to accomplish. Our soul knows what that is, right? So we know that if we do our part, God's going to keep his end of the bargain, right? Give us our allotted portion. You know, we will get in proportion to what we, you know, put out. It's karma, right? You put out something good into the world, then you will get yours in return. You will get blessed in return. You don't have to worry about, you know, and the more you do that, the more you see that you don't have that feeling anymore of like, oh, something's going to go wrong. When you have this feeling that everything's going to go right, it does. Well, not that you don't have little setbacks, like I just talked about, but you view them differently. You view them as, gee, I have fewer of those fails than I used to. In other words, when you learn from your mistakes and from your lessons, then you don't have to go back and do those things again. Okay? You know that those things don't work and that those people are not for you anymore because you're done with them. You can move on the path, right? And you can go tell people what you learned, right? When you were still asleep, and then your eyes were suddenly opened, right? And that fits into what is in the gospel today. So, in other words, you have a confidence, right? Once we reach that certain level, right, where we're trusting in God completely on our path to protect our soul, to raise us up, right? We have a confidence, so we can take steps forward without fear of being abandoned, of being led astray, whatever. First, and there goes my fridge. First letter of Peter. He says, in other words, when we ask the universe for things, the universe asks God. It's impartial. In other words, it gives, like I said, it gives back. We get back according to our works. And it says right here, the first letter of Peter, we're set free from our ancestral karma. In other words, that's the stuff that gets handed down to us, not with gold or silver or material things of this world, but with that, the Christ, the light of Christ that comes through all of us, right? So he came to show us the way, to give us a taste of this new age that is dawning on us right now. In other words, he opened the scriptures to us, the real meaning and the connection of everything. How it makes sense, right? It makes our hearts burn. This is part of the gospel. Lord, open the scriptures to us, make our hearts burn. I think that's like Mercury and Aries. The message, the burning word. So the Gospels, Luke 24, and two of the disciples, they say Cleopas, and Simon. They're on the road from Jerusalem to a place called Emmaus, which they say, I looked it up, it means hot springs. They say it's about 7 miles outside of Jerusalem. It may not be a specific place, but sort of a general, direct vicinity. And they're talking about everything. Between the two of them, they're just everything that's going on. They're just walking and talking, and this stranger, Jesus, joins them, but he won't let them see yet that it's him. And they're like, oh, he says, what are you talking about? And they say, oh, haven't you heard all this stuff went down with Jesus? And we thought he was going to save us, and then he died. And they say the women went to the tomb, and they weren't. It was an angelic appearance there, and they're talking about all this stuff, and how some of them witnessed. They saw the tomb, they went in the tomb, and they saw everything, that he wasn't there, and then, So he says, how foolish you are for not believing, for not connecting the dots, for not recognizing that this is what the prophets predicted, right? That it was necessary for Jesus to die and rise, because they were very upset when they're talking about this. Of course, they think it's the end of the world, right? They're going along and they're saying, what's next? What's this bad thing is going to happen next? And they're distraught, right? They just lost their guiding light, they think, because he's not there. They don't see him, therefore they think he's gone. Not within reach, which is kind of how we feel, right? I mean, it's easy to feel disconnected, right, from God, from Jesus being on this earth plane. We feel disconnected from, the divine. But, then, he says, he tells them this, then, he seems like he's going to go ahead, but they're like, oh, come on to dinner with us. So they sit down, he breaks the bread and blesses it, and then they know it's him, right? Then they can see clearly that it was him the whole time. But then he disappears, right? So they said, our hearts were burning when he was talking to us about the scriptures. They knew it. They knew it was him, but not consciously, like within, in a way that we all know. We all know truth, right? But we don't always, it doesn't dawn on us consciously so that we can necessarily act on it, right? Confidently. But that's what he did for them, right? He opened their eyes so that they could then go back to the apostles and tell them about what happened, right? They can confidently say, this happened, and give them hope, right, for the future. So, okay, Zazoo, what's the song? Okay, song of the week. It's a Blue Oyster Cult kind of week. Yeah, but this one, not the Don't Fear the Reaper. Although I was watching the SNL skit with the cowbell. Yeah, that was fun. But no, the song Burning for You, because obviously with the burning, their hearts burning and all the fire imagery, and it was perfect. This one came out around the time MTV first started. This song came out, and they did a video, and they set a car on fire. It's like Mars and Aries. The band is playing, and they're hanging out, and then they set the car on fire. It's kind of cool. But no, I was in high school. It was the summer, August of '81, so I was going into my junior year of high school. So it was the single, lead single from their 8th album, Fire of Unknown Origin. And so the guitarist and vocalist, Buck Dharma, his real name is Donald Roser. Roser? Yeah. And this other songwriter, rock critic, Richard Meltzer, co-wrote it. It got to #1 on the Billboard Mainstream Rock, which at the time was the top tracks. And it was a new Billboard list that had just come out. So it went to #1 on that list, on the debut of that list. And then it spent 3 weeks on the Hot 100 Billboard. It didn't get past 40, though. But it was more of a classic rock kind of song, but mainstream rock. But they said, this Dharma guy, it said he wrote his part of the song. He had just moved to Connecticut, and he wrote it in his garage studio. It was their second top 40 after Don't Fear the Reaper, which was in '76. And it was the first song, was their first song to chart on that, the top tracks. So got to number one August 22nd, 1981. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of fun. And then I looked up Bruce Dickinson. He was kind of a made up. There was a real guy named Bruce Dickinson. He was just kind of like a radio, studio executive, but he wasn't the producer. Will Ferrell just took that name because he thought it sounded funny, and the character, I guess that what's his name? The Bruce Dickinson character, Christopher Walken. It was kind of a mishmash of different people, But the band did debate using cowbell, how much cowbell to use. So that part was good. But the drummer was actually the one who played the cowbell. And so, part of it was made up. It was based on truth. So, and it's just so funny. But anyway, I gotta go get my paleo hot chocolate, and I'm gonna go for a walk later. Have my cashew butter rice cake and my paleo hot chocolate with the marshmallows. Yeah, I guess that's a Venus and Taurus kind of thing. Having hot chocolate, paleo, but it's healthy. It's with coconut milk. Then I might go for a walk, get some fresh air, exercise, and post my video and make beef and broccoli later. So, there goes the fridge. It's a Sunday. I might stay warm. I'll be back next week, same place, different time. Everybody take care. Have a great week.